I'm incredibly confused, and it appears that I'm not the only one confused right now. Charles Barkley seems to be just as confused as I am. Last month, I broke the sad, painful news that CNN was canceling King Charles, the show featuring Charles Barkley and Oprah's emotional backup to Steedle, Gayle King. Well, Casey, his name is not Steedle. I think his name is Stedman. Yeah, I don't think anyone cares. Last month, Charlie and Gayle, they boarded a lifeboat and they bid farewell to the CNN Titanic. The great one, he returned to covering the NBA playoffs on TNT, another job that he is holding on to temporarily, and Gayle King returned to parts unknown. I think she hosts a morning show on CBS that no one watches, and a couple of weeks ago, she was modeling bikinis for the Woke Illustrated swimsuit edition, sharing a centerfold with Chad Thundercock, who was modeling tuck-friendly bathing suits. Of course, that special edition of Woke Illustrated, it sold 0 copies. But I broke the news about Charles Barkley being canceled by CNN on April 14th. What was that? 5, maybe 6 weeks ago? In the last 5 or 6 weeks, we have not mentioned this huge embarrassing failure once. There were a few articles written in the mainstream media, but for the most part, we all moved on. CNN canceled King Charles, no one cared. In the media, they shifted their focus to more important issues like trying to convince the toxically masculine that the WNBA is professional basketball. But there's one person who hasn't seemed to move on. There's one person who can't seem to understand that his primetime dump at CNN is canceled. For some reason, Charles Barkley seems to be under the impression that he's just on hiatus with CNN. Maybe he thinks that once the NBA playoffs are over, I will return to CNN and sedate dozens of viewers again. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Last week, Charles Barkley was the guest on something called the Mike Missanelli podcast, the Mike Torelli podcast. Who cares? It doesn't matter what his name is. I've never heard of this dude before, and judging by his numbers on YouTube, neither has anyone else. His interview with Charles Barkley, it has 4,600 views in the last 48 hours, which is great for a channel with 3,500 subscribers. I mean, what the hell's Charles Barkley doing appearing on this channel? Maybe he owed Mikey a favor. I think the show was sponsored by Bet Rivers. I don't know what that is, but going off the name, I would imagine it's probably an offshore sports book. Maybe Charles Barkley was playing the ponies, got into a little bit of a hole, and offered to wipe away his debt by appearing on this channel that no one watches. I don't know. Either way, Charlie appeared with Mike Mazzarelli to unleash his bitterness towards CNN. Charles Barkley wants you to know, KC is wrong. He's just wrong. His show wasn't canceled by CNN. Charles Barkley and the woman responsible for massaging Oprah's bunion, they were not fired by CNN. No. According to Charles Barkley, there is absolutely no way CNN canceled his show. Why? What was his reasoning? Before we get to that, let's get to the sponsor for today's video, my good friends at Angelic Imports. Me personally, I have never been a big eater of candy. I don't have a sweet tooth. Every once in a while, I'll have a craving for something like chocolate donuts. When I get there, I buy a dozen of them and I'm finished after just eating one. I've just never been big into sweets, but my sweet tooth, it developed with a vengeance once I discovered Angelic Imports. We were out late last night, so I slept late this morning. I didn't have time for lunch today. The Gouffre chocolate from Angelic Imports, it was my lunch. I can't put this stuff down. The Gouffre from Angelic Imports, it comes directly from the French, Swiss, and German border areas. Father's Day is right around the corner. My dad always liked candy, so this year I'm getting him a box of Gouffre Golden Secrets. For less than $20, Pops, he will have enough chocolate to snack on for a month. The Gouffre chocolate from Angelic Imports. It is the perfect gift for high school and college graduations, wedding anniversaries, or if you just feel like spoiling yourself. Plus, if you support Angelic Imports, you are supporting a proud veteran in our Air Force and our military. So click the link in the description below. Use my promo code Behind the Line to receive 10% off your first purchase with Angelic Imports. All right. Charlie and Mike the Miz, they are having a candid discussion about the huge embarrassing failure at CNN known as King Charles. You know, I do have to give Charles Barkley a little bit of credit here. Do you know how difficult it is to be the biggest failure at CNN? There's only 2 people at this network capable of drawing ratings, and neither one of them actually worked there. The only 2 stars at CNN, Bill Maher and Donald Trump. Orange Man bad! If they're not heavily featured, CNN doesn't have an audience. It's amazing when you think about it. This accomplishment by Charles Barkley and I guess Gayle King too, it's extraordinary. For years, CNN's ratings, they have been almost nothing. Their polished turd has a family of about 4 flies hovering around it. Charles Barkley, he managed to convince those flies to hover around the trash instead. This show was a disastrous failure at a network that embraces failure. There was no reason for CNN to announce the cancellation of King Charles because no one was watching it. But because CNN didn't announce the cancellation, because CNN didn't notify Charlie personally that his checks would be bouncing going forward, Charles Barkley, he wants you to believe that the show's not actually canceled. Watch for yourself.
You know the type of boneheads I work with?
What?
They haven't even told. First of all, it wasn't canceled, or they haven't. I talk to Gayle all the time. They haven't told us we were canceled. That's how stupid these people are. Like I read the articles that we were canceled, and I was like, we weren't canceled. I was always only going to do that for a short period of time, and then I was going to go back to the NBA. So me and Gail, so this is how boneheaded these people are I work with. I'm like, wait a minute, were we canceled? They didn't tell me that. We had already, I was gonna do a short little window and I was gonna go back to the NBA. But that just to show you how full of shit the whole thing is with CNN.
First of all, I partially agree here with Charles Barkley. Yes, CNN filled with incompetence. Yes, CNN is filled with people who have no idea what they're doing. Without a doubt, if CNN is canceling King Charles, which they are, they should have had the decency to let Charles Barkley know personally. I don't blame him for being pissed off. I would be too. You're going to cancel my show and I have to find out about it through the media? I have to find out about it through the New York Post and some doofus on YouTube who clearly has no sense because he is a dedicated diehard fan of the New Orleans Pelicans? That's how I find out about it? Charles Barkley is 100% right with his anger towards CNN. However, this stuff about King Charles being short-lived by design, this stuff about the show being a limited series, that is complete bullshit. I ain't buying it. CNN was paying Gayle King $12 million a year. You really think they were paying her that kind of money for a limited series? But KC, the show was always scheduled to go on hiatus once the NBA playoffs started. Yeah. Hiatus. Last I checked, hiatus was a temporary break. You come back from hiatus. You don't come back from cancellation. This network has been begging. They have been pleading for a savior in prime time. Last year, CNN was so desperate, they were reaching out to Travis Noah, begging him to save their dump. This network is so irrelevant, an embarrassing failure like Travis Noah, he would be embarrassed to work at CNN. Let me ask you something. If Charles Barkley and Oprah's bunion soother were drawing respectable ratings in prime time, do you think CNN would cancel the show? And when I say respectable ratings, I'm not talking about 1 million viewers. If Charles Barkley drew half that number, that would be an increase over CNN's average ratings in prime time. But he couldn't even manage to do that. King Charles averaged 459,000 viewers. That is almost 10% less than what CNN typically averages in prime time. Last year, when it was announced that Charles Barkley was boarding the Titanic, I said this was a huge mistake. It wasn't a mistake for Gayle King. Hell, this was a win-win for Gayle. She was paid $12 million to do what she typically does, not draw an audience, not entertain an audience. But it was different for Charles Barkley. He's one of the biggest draws in the mainstream media. Last year, after I predicted this show would be a huge embarrassing failure, I said Charles Barkley would be the one blamed for it. I think I was wrong. I think this is more of an indictment on CNN. The reason this show failed, it wasn't all because of Charles Barkley. Did he suck on the show? Yes, obviously, but that was easy to predict. Charles Barkley openly admits that he doesn't watch the NBA. He's a Hall of Famer, been covering the league for 25 years. If he doesn't follow a league that he is familiar with, what the hell made CNN think that he would stay on top of current events and politics? In sports media, you can get away with lacking knowledge as long as you're entertaining. Stephen A. Smith, for example. Stephen A. doesn't know shit about fuck when it comes to most sports. He knows next to nothing about the NFL. But you know what? He's damn sure entertaining when he's talking about it, especially when he is roasting the Dallas Cowboys. It's the same thing with Charles Barkley on TNT. Who cares if he doesn't watch the NBA? He's entertaining when he talks about it. You can get away with that in sports. You can't get away with it in political media. The expectations are completely different. People expect you to be informed. Charles Barkley never had a chance at CNN, and it wasn't all his fault that the show failed. The reason the show failed is because everyone fails at CNN. This is an indictment on CNN, not Charles Barkley. If Inside the NBA ceases to exist next year and Charles Barkley moves to NBC, they will have the most watched pregame show in the league. Charles Barkley will continue to draw ratings, but where does CNN go from here? What will be their next failed strategy? You tried with Charles Barkley? Failure. Trying right now with Bill Maher? Failure. Tried with Caitlin Collins, Katie Woo! Failure. Philip Abbey and Laura the Coat Hanger? Failure. You tried appealing to an older demographic by continuing to put a fossil on television named Wolf Blitzer? Woof, woof, woof. Yeah, that perfectly describes rating for his show. Woof. What's next? CNN's running out of options. I don't know if anyone can save this network, but what about you? Can CNN be saved? Also, Charles Barkley claims that his show wasn't canceled because CNN didn't notify him and it was always supposed to be a limited series. I'm not buying that. If this show was a success, there's no doubt that CNN would bring it back. They're not bringing it back because they probably lost millions of dollars paying Gayle King 8 figures to draw low 6-figure ratings, but give me your thoughts. Sound off in the comments below. Might be back later this afternoon, and so I'll see you guys then. If not, I'll see you guys tomorrow.